Everyone, it's Alan Thornton, President and CEO of St. John's Community Services, back for another episode of Advocates for All. And it's a real pleasure for me today because I think since I've been doing these videos, I have not yet had a board member on. And joining me today is Paul Preziotti. He's a SJCS board member, has been with the board for 4 years, going on 5, and is also a principal at Johnson Lambert as a CPA. Paul, it's a real pleasure to have you on today. Thank you for joining me.
No, thanks for the opportunity, Alan. Thrilled to be here.
And so, Paul, you and I have probably had one of the longer standing relationships relative to myself and the board because we've worked very closely together with the Finance and Audit Committee. And, before going into some of that, if you could share a little bit about both what you do professionally and then what prompted you to come on board with SJCS.
No, absolutely. And Alan, you're one of the people I've talked to the most during the pandemic. So a little bit about my background. Again, my name is Paul Preziotti, and I'm a partner with Johnson Lambert. We're a CPA firm that provide audit, tax, and consulting solutions to the nonprofit and employee benefit plan industries. So background about how I got involved with St. John's Community Services. Let's go back to 2016. And I was actively evaluating board opportunities because I've spent my whole career working in the nonprofit industry, and it's something that, I believe in from a personal perspective, but also from a professional perspective. I think in my role as a leader in the nonprofit community, I need to get experience to different scenarios and different situations. And so anyway, I knew a board member at St. John's who's still here to this day, Doug Palmer, and he mentioned, hey, we've had some people rotate out of the leadership roles from a finance perspective. Would you be interested? And I said, sure, but I want to get to meet the leaders first. And so I had an opportunity to meet Steve, the board chair, and others, and learn a little bit more about St. John's Community Services financial history and their mission and rich history with very long time of delivering services to those in need. And, it really checked all the boxes and appealed to me on all fronts, from a great mission and helping the community and those in need, but also an opportunity to provide my unique perspective as St. John's as an organization grows and expands upon the rich roots that it has.
Well, and you talk about expansion. It's been quite the 3 years, from my perspective, since I've joined St. John's, because we've added a couple significant service lines, new programs to help new people. One of them you and I were talking about before, but that's our homeless services in Ithaca, New York. And that seemed to touch a nerve for you. That was something that you were really excited to see us kind of branching into that line of service and helping a new group of people.
Yeah, from a personal perspective and a public health perspective, it's a critical need, as you know, and I think everyone who's watching this knows as well. So, I was really touched to see us get involved and, expand to a different part of the country, and especially now more than ever with COVID-19, right? Hopefully things will get better in the next year with vaccines, but it's a critical need now. And, we have heroes at the shelter there who are providing services to those who are in need. But I'm also happy from a business perspective. Again, people think about nonprofit organizations and assume, we have to provide our mission, but at the same time, we also have to be entrepreneurial. And, this was a great opportunity that checked both the entrepreneurial box. We can grow and expand our service offerings, but at the same time, really do good in the community. And that really hits home with me.
Yeah, and it's been awesome to see. I mean, in the 2 years that we've been offering those services, right now we're averaging over 100 people a night that we're coordinating shelter for, and we're providing hundreds of meals on top of that. And it's just really remarkable to think. And the physical space itself is not that big. I mean, the building itself can shelter maybe 20 people during COVID. So it's a lot of community partnership. So it really is a grassroots effort that is underway to make sure that people, especially like you said, it's December, it's Ithaca, it's cold. They've had some warmer weather, not typical for this time of year, but still, it gets down to below 40 degrees pretty fast up there. And so to know that we're playing a role with other community partners in helping make sure people are outside, aren't on the street, aren't couch surfing if they don't need to, but have access to support and services that could help them end their homelessness. That's been a really exciting kind of chapter to be involved in with St. John's for sure. And you mentioned that, over 150 years, at different points in our history, we've pivoted and based on the community need. And I really feel like we're in that phase now, looking for how do we continue to help other people. Another program similar that we just launched this year was the Oasis program, helping homeless youth in DC. And we just moved our 4th resident into that. So it's exciting to see these things kind of growing and happening for sure. It does take, though, like a different perspective, from a board member role, because, when you're staying close to your core, that's pretty predictable, fairly safe, what to expect. When you start to branch out, you now have different risks, different opportunities, but different risks too. And so it's been great to work with you and the finance committee as we talk through these different initiatives and looking at how do we mitigate various risks along the way. That's kind of a specialty of yours, certainly from a vocational standpoint. What are some of the challenges you see nonprofits going through at this point in time with the pandemic particularly?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about nonprofits, a piece of advice a wise person gave me a long time ago is being a nonprofit is a tax strategy, and you still have to treat a nonprofit like it's a business. Now, it's a business that's providing good to the community and giving help to those that are in need. But like any business, when COVID-19 hit, we had to pivot really quickly. Alan, I remember those first couple of meetings in late March, early April, where everyone was like, okay, what's going on? And then, we realized, albeit, while we might think it was fast in hindsight, it was those first couple of weeks felt really slow because we all came to the conclusion, wow, number one, this isn't going to be over anytime soon. And number two, we need to make real changes in our business strategy, both from delivery of our services to our customers, which are those who are in need, and then also thinking from a financial perspective, how we can manage cash flow. And your team, a really talented team, George, especially Sherry. Sherry's done a terrific job throughout all this. Pivoted really quickly to think about, okay, we need to analyze cash in this time frame, and it affects these services and these assets on our statement of financial position. And again, that shows you it was really, I mean, as a board member, we're just here to kind of guide and, provide thoughts and provide the path. And you as management are really taking the lead in the mission and moving forward. And I think it was a collective group effort. And I can say here unequivocally, I never would have said this if you asked me March 15th. We've pivoted our strategy and we're providing our services better than ever. And we're also, while we aren't over the hurdle yet, we still have financial challenges. We're doing a lot better than we were.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because, as you know, shortly after I came on board, we found out that St. John's had some very significant financial challenges. Yep. And so that was 3 years ago. And there were hints of those things, but there weren't clear answers as to why they existed. And so collectively, we did have to do a lot of digging in our financial systems and operations, our receivables, payables, all of that to basically understand kind of what's happening, why are we in the situation that we're in, and what do we have to do and change in order to improve. And certainly, bringing on the right team, played a huge role in that. And so we've got a phenomenal controller with Sherry at the helm of that really has been able to get right into the day-to-day, right into the weeds, understand kind of every single financial operation that we depend on and put better systems in place. There's a lot of work that went into that over the 2 years leading up to the pandemic hitting. And so I think that positioned us well to have these frank, honest conversations when the pandemic hit. We weren't in a place where, we got to build rapport with the finance and audit committee or these board members. You and I have been problem solving together with this group, for 2 years previous. And I think that positioned us really, really well. And it shows, I think, the strength of collaboration between board and management, like you were saying.
For sure. And I've joked with a couple of the board members that prior to Sherry, your title really wasn't CEO, it was CEO/CFO. So I think you have a very unique perspective there. And now that you have people to help you carry out the strategy, that allows you to go out and do good in other ways.
Yeah, and I think that going back to pandemic response, and this, I felt like we were heading into year 3 of a 4-year turnaround as we entered January of this year. And to your point, because our cash was getting better but still very thin, we really had to move fast on some restructuring that we had to do. And it actually accelerated some of the decisions and actions that we had on the horizon to make. But the pandemic didn't really give us any time. We had to immediately respond. And because of that, I think going into this fiscal year, we are much better positioned financially, and have options on the table for where can we expand and where can we invest to build capacity for the organization moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. And we made those decisions quickly and as a group. And, we did what anyone would do. We took all the information that was available to us and analyzed the best possible path forward. But, what I'm really excited about because of the improved financial condition, and you mentioned this, is, what can we do going forward? And I think the OASIS program is only the tip of the iceberg there. I think you're going to see us explore how can we get in touch with new people who have needs that we can service, and then we're on a Zoom call right now. How can we deliver those services in an alternative manner? And, for the population we serve, you and I are fortunate enough to be able to say, hey, Paul, call me up. Let's get on a Zoom call. And I think it's going to take creative thinking from all of the bright people at St. John's Community Services for how we pivot in a virtual model moving forward.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because, the team has been hard at it. Fortunately, they were doing a lot of that work prior to the pandemic, and then the pandemic accelerated their efforts. So you've got Precious as our Chief Innovation Officer working with her tech team to try to increase the access to enabling technology so that the people that we're supporting that might have intellectual developmental disabilities can still virtually connect with their therapists, with their medical staff, with their loved ones. This is a time of isolation, and those that have intellectual and developmental disabilities can experience that at a heightened level, because they may not fully understand what is happening around them. And all of a sudden, they're not able to go outside. They're not able to go see people they would normally see. Their visits with their family members are cut dramatically. So whether it's a person experiencing, intellectual and developmental disabilities, or someone that's in our retirement community that's, an older person that would love to be connected to family, this can be an incredibly isolating time. And so that use of technology is critical now more than ever. And as unfortunately we're in another surge of the virus, Precious and her team are doubling down and pushing the acceleration of the use of that technology even further, faster, in an effort to try to make sure people stay connected and that they're not isolated, and that they still have the opportunity to move their life forward.
Yeah, you said it best, especially, we're in the holiday period right now. There are holidays literally going on right now, and we're going to have this for the next 2 weeks. So, I salute them, especially Precious. All I can say is her title is well earned, innovation, especially now.
For sure. So, Paul, from your perspective, how important, like you see this in your work, how important is capacity building for nonprofits from your perspective?
So when we talk about capacity building, again, we're talking about the infrastructure of the organization moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand, number one, what do you have the capacity to support from a financial perspective? And that's something that's evolved for St. John's, right? You mentioned it when you came on as CEO a few years ago, you quickly discovered that, hey, the financial position I thought we had isn't what we actually have in place and what the financial statements show. And so it's a process of understanding, okay, how do we deliver these services to people? And what infrastructure ideally do we need in the background to make that happen? And it's not something where you can just flick a switch and make it happen over time. Let's take the accounting function, for example. It was an evolution to get where we needed. And even when we got the right people in place, it was making sure we surround them with the right systems. And I think when you take that to the program delivery perspective, the most important thing from my perspective when thinking about nonprofits is identifying your leaders and bright people for the future. And Precious is a great example of that. You identified her early on and, you said, run with it. And she has, and she's done a great job of that. So I think it's important to consider not only the financial perspective, but also the leaders from a programmatic perspective when evaluating that.
Yeah, and I think too, like one of the lessons I've walked away with over the last couple of years is, that, and this could almost sound like heresy in the wrong environment, but that budgets are less meaningful than rolling forecasts, and really looking at cash flow and projecting out over the next quarter to 2 quarters to understand where you're going and what your position is. And because then you can start to really judge, okay, what might my weaknesses or challenges be, or what things might I have to troubleshoot, but simultaneously, what opportunities might I be able to invest in to build capacity for the organization, to expand services, to improve services, to improve its overall capacity. And so that's really been something, because that's something that you and I have talked a lot about, which is, we review it with the finance committee. It was weekly to every other week. Now I think we're back to monthly now, but basically looking ahead and saying, okay, how do we stand from a cash flow standpoint? What does the forecast look like over the next few months? And because of that, do we need to hold back on some things, or is now a time to invest? And fortunately, we're in a place where we're investing. So we're investing in new financial systems, new HR systems, and new fundraising systems as a result of the position that we find ourselves in, and that collaboration and that look at how do we manage cash to the better of building capacity for the organization.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it best, right? A yearly budget is great, but does it really matter if you might not be here a year from now? I think you have to understand it. And we did early on as a team that this was a very dynamic, fluctuating situation. And what mattered was what's our cash position 2 weeks from now, as opposed to our budget a year from now. And I don't mean to minimize the importance of budget and strategic planning. Those are very important. And that's what we do at St. John's as well. But at the same time, I think when looking at the situation for a nonprofit, you need to prioritize what's important to you, how dynamic the situation is, and go from there.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great point. As soon as we saw that we were in a more favorable position, the things that we had been, parked on the side, waiting to invest in, that would only help us, we were able to start moving on. And I'm excited to see, what is it going to look like a year from now for St. John's, when we've been able to make some of these investments, or 3 years from now, 5 years from now. So it's exciting, because at the end, that ultimately it better impacts the people that you're serving now. And it opens up new opportunities to potentially serve people that are out of your reach right now, that you could help change their life. You could help them improve their life if only you could get to them. And really, your point about homo services, we're now helping to change the lives of people in Ithaca and here in DC that a couple of years ago, they were on the radar, but we had no means to get to them. And so in expanding our mission, we expand our impact. And it's an exciting time to be at St. John's for sure because of that.
Yeah, and I mean, COVID-19 certainly has been a traumatic event. I think we're over 300,000 in deaths right now, but at the same time, this is a generation changing event. And from any event such as that, there's going to be new business strategies and models that evolve. So while we certainly have to be sad and take into account the loss, the flip side of it is we need to take advantage of the opportunity that presents itself from the change in the business environment. And I'm really excited about, I don't know exactly what the future holds, and I'm excited about that. And I'm sure you are too.
Yeah, I love that language, generational changing event. I mean, because it has an opportunity. It's been transformational so far in many ways, and it could still be transformational moving forward for sure. Paul, what do you do to kind of, in the midst of all this, how are you taking care of yourself?
How am I taking care of myself? Well, I'm not going to give you an answer on a scale of 1 to 10 of how successful I am, but I think it's important to get outside and get some vitamin D. I mean, I could very easily be sitting here, straight from 7 to 5 p.m. on video call. So at least once a day, I either make a plan to go out and have a walk. And even if that means I'm taking a call from a walk, I just tell the person, look, I'm not going to be on Zoom. Here's why. Or I go out and golf. There's not a lot of golf that's going to be happening this week with the weather we're getting, but it was nice this weekend.
No, that's really cool. That's super important. It's been a message or a practice that we're trying to encourage our team at St. John's, as taking care of yourself in the midst of this, because the stress is heightened. Like you're saying, you could go meeting after meeting after meeting, and after a while, you just get zoomed out too. And so I'm glad to hear that you've got those mechanisms in place and those practices in place, and that you're taking care of yourself. And definitely, I haven't gotten out to golf yet this season. At some point in time, I need to do that. So I'll have to call you up, and you can put up with my bad game.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, Paul, I want to thank you so much for being on the board. I want to thank you for all of your support for St. John's. And I want to thank you for encouraging others to support us as well. So thank you for being such an advocate. It's truly a pleasure and an honor to work with you.
No, likewise, the feeling is mutual. And for those watching this, Alan and I encourage you to learn more about us on the web. Alan, you want to point them to our website?
Definitely, www.sjcs.org. And you can learn a lot about how you can get involved in Support St. John's and make a difference in the lives of the men, women, and children that we serve. So thank you, Paul. Take care. We'll see you.
Thanks for your time.